Hey, what's happening everybody out there? My name is Jakejames Lugo and welcome to the channel. Now I play a lot of role-playing games every now and then, but I haven't really played every single big classic that everybody talks about. This is why every time that people tell me about the Suikoden series and how great it is, I always tell myself that I'm gonna get to it one day. But you know what? Now's as good as time as any. But instead of just jumping to all the different games that people really praise and really say that are classics of the genre, let's actually go through every single one of them, starting at the very beginning. So is the Suikoden series any good? Is it great? Or like, where do I stand with it? Well, let's find out together. This is Suikoden for the PlayStation 1.
Suikoden is the first game in a series of JRPGs published by Konami for the original PlayStation. It came out in Japan in 1995, but it was a whole year before the game came to North America. It didn't just find an audience on the PlayStation 1, however, as the game was also released on the Sega Saturn and Windows PC in Japan in 1998. The story of Suikoden follows a nameless hero, who was later named Tyr McDull in official materials released by Konami, who is also the son of a general in the Scarlet Moon Empire. Instead of being a peaceful and prosperous empire, it has caused all types of havoc throughout the land and hardship on its many citizens. Because of this, destiny has taken a turn and called upon Tyr to lead a revolt against the Scarlet Moon Empire by finding the 108 Stars of Destiny. These are people from all over the world who can aid Tyr on his journey and hopefully bring about a revolution to bring down the Scarlet Moon Empire. There's a lot of old school RPG characteristics in Suikoden that fans of the genre will love. The visuals, music, and ensemble of characters you meet throughout the journey just ooze that classic vibe. There's a little cheesiness and some typical genre tropes here and there, but many JRPGs of that era followed similar formulas in their design. But the real question here is if Suikoden is a great RPG that everybody should check out and experience. Honestly, that might depend on how exactly you value story and gameplay in your role-playing games.
The story of Suikoden I feel like is something you either gest well with or you don't. There isn't anything inherently wrong with the story of the game. I feel like it was just fine for what it is, especially for a JRPG of that era, and there are a few little like tropey things here and there, but it's not necessarily something that I really resonated with. When I play JRPGs, I usually latch onto either one character or one plot point or one specific thing about the story that really kind of strings me along, but with this game it wasn't necessarily the case, even though I didn't really find anything inherently bad or really terrible about the story as a whole. There are characters that I do feel like are kind of cool, and I understand why people are big fans of them, again, including the main hero, which is called Tyr, even though it's the main hero that you can name yourself. You have Victor, you have Cleo, you have Gremio, and you have a lot of other characters you run into. There's a lot of characters in this game. However, big shoutouts to Victor, who I feel like is that one guy you want to have around that just like, again, when things are super indecisive, he has those like funny moments. It's like, don't worry guys, hold my beer, I got this, don't worry, I got you 1 second, don't worry. And then all of a sudden some hilarity ensues. I really feel like, little moments like that were pretty cool. I wish there was a few more in here scattered throughout the story. But outside of that, the whole story involving just the Empire and the Liberation Army, I think there's a lot of political intrigue there. That's what really is the driving force behind the plot of Suikoden. That's pretty damn interesting. However, it's not something that's like super grand. It didn't really kind of grip me. It didn't like have me playing for like 10 or 15 plus hours, even though this game is kind of, you could complete it around 24 to about 30 hours. It still was something that was just okay for me. It wasn't anything that was too over the top. So with the story section out the way, let's talk about the more important thing, which I feel like is very key to Suikoden as far as like a total experience, and that's the gameplay. And there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of stuff going on with this game, a little bit more so and a little bit more different than other JRPGs. This game has all the stuff that you would expect for something of this genre, but it presents a few things in a very unique way.
Suikoden has a lot of things going for it in the gameplay department. Your party could be heavily customized with up to 6 characters, with new allies you gain throughout the game in a variety of different ways. You also have the exploration of the world map and towns, as well as your typical random battles like in most JRPGs. Exploring new areas in the world map takes time, since you have such a wide map to traverse. There's many different places you visit, but not all of them are visually interesting and you'll be doing a lot of backtracking. However, the turn-based battles here are presented in a very interesting way. Every battle you face has a cinematic quality to it, with the camera zooming in and out or moving around when taking turns to attack. You can usually tell you're going to get a critical hit when the camera zooms right into the enemy you target. Your turn could be done manually, or you could let the party run on autopilot with free will and just watch easy battles finish without much thought, but most of the time your party will just attack instead of doing other actions. Magic is done with the use of talismans and runes, which are the series' version of magical attacks and special abilities. These work exactly how you would expect, but gaining them for your characters could be a little bit tedious since you have to make your way to a nearby shop to attach them. I found this annoying because while the customization factor here is pretty high, it can also be very confusing when you're trying to plan out your loadout and your character growth beforehand. This only gets more crazier with the inventory system that Suikoden has. I absolutely hate this approach to item management and found it to be a real problem later in the game. Your items are given to specific characters when you discover them, and you either have to search for them or manually move them as needed, which could take a lot of time and could be a real drag. Most other JRPGs around that era had better inventory systems, where you had a massive supply that you could just pick the items you want to use without having to search through every single character in your party. I get the idea of wanting to be different here, but this item management in Suikoden is just not practical and more of a hindrance than anything else. All of this aside, however, and getting back to the battles of the game, the bigger fights and boss encounters you have are all challenging. You'll definitely have to do some grinding in a number of spots throughout the story, but if you can get into enough battles and gain enough EXP, you should be fine. There are some difficulty spikes that feel like your typical JRPG brick walls in a few sections, but you'll just have to grind it out and play very smart in order to overcome them. Is the struggle worth the reward, however? Yes, more often than not, but I have to acknowledge how more annoying than fun that some of these moments can be.
To me, the battles of Suikoden look pretty damn cool. This is a much more different way that battles in a JRPG are presented compared to other JRPGs of that era like Final Fantasy and stuff. You're not looking at things just straight on. Things have a little bit more of a dynamic or like cinematic quality to them, and I really enjoy that. I'm pretty sure this was also a pool for a lot of people that really got into the series back then, especially since there was a lot of other like classic RPGs of that era like Chrono Trigger and a whole bunch of others around that time frame. This was something that made Suikoden really stand out. However, I do want to mention that because Suikoden is a JRPG of that era, you're going to be doing a lot of grinding in this game. You're going to have to play a lot of battles to gain a whole bunch of EXP for your characters, get a whole bunch of money, which are bits in this world, as well as also try to find different items that are going to be very key later on in your journey. Besides all the grinding you're going to be doing in Suikoden, which is very plentiful, you're also going to be doing a lot of backtracking in this game. This is a wide open world map that you're going to be able to explore with a whole bunch of different areas you're going to be able to visit. There's a lot of stuff you're going to be doing in this game. One of the things I found a little bit annoying about some of the backtracking in this game is the need to go through certain dungeons again after I've already gone through them without any sort of means of being able to like fast travel out of them. You don't really get that until much later into the game, or at least, you know, a good couple of hours into the game, and I found that to be a little bit of a pain here and there, especially when I needed to get to a certain area in order to progress the plot. Don't get me wrong, you do have some of the escape runes and other stuff that you get eventually at certain points, but early on in the game that isn't really like abundant. You don't really pick up stuff like that, and I found that to be just a hint of a little bit of annoying. I do want to compliment the game for being very colorful overall, even though there are certain areas that do feel a little bit bland, especially with the color palette choices here and there. Some of the areas and the towns that you visit do feel a little bit of the same. They're almost kind of like copy and pasted, with the exception of the layouts for every sort of like building and certain things that you interact with in those areas. That's just a little bit of a nitpick here and there, but it is something that stood out to me, especially after playing this game for so long. Another thing I do want to compliment the game on is during the battles when you have this free will option that allows you to speed up some of the more lesser battles, especially when you're grinding for EXP. I really appreciate that, and I wish that more JRPGs had some sort of like feature that was kind of similar to that, or at least allowed me to get through some of those more boring battles, especially when they're not really big like crazy boss battles or anything. Allows me to really get through them in a fast way. You're going to be doing that a lot in Suikoden. That was like the one option I was really messing around with the most, as opposed to just going to fight and actually choosing my different battle options. That was something where I really just went to free will, went through the battle, let all my characters just attack basically, and just kept doing that for hours on end. That being said, however, that does prevent you in most instances from using a lot more of the cooler attacks, especially the ones that require the talismans or the runes, because some of these attacks look very cool in the way that they're presented, and it does kind of suck that the majority of the time you're just hitting free will and just having your characters just attack basically just to get through basic battles just to get that EXP. It is a little bit of a nitpick as well, but that's just something that stood out to me. Now let's talk about something that's very important to the Suikoden series as a whole, and this is where it really got its start for the entire franchise. The idea of just gathering a whole bunch of different allies from all over the world to join up with your army and being able to kind of, fight for your cause. This is something that's very cool to the Suikoden series, and it's gathering all the stars of destiny.
Gaining new allies and heroes to join your forces in Suikoden is a major part of the game, not just for the story, but the gameplay as well. Throughout the story, you'll come across all kinds of people, warriors and non-warriors alike, who you can recruit to join the Liberation Army. This can happen in a number of ways, including just talking to someone randomly or completing a task beforehand. Sometimes you even gain a new ally by having a certain character in your party to initiate a conversation that leads to them joining up. This could be very interesting and a good cause to revisit most areas throughout the world map. Gaining as many new allies as you can helps build up your castle you take over a few hours into the story, which gives you access to certain shops, bonuses, and other perks that could really help you out. But while finding all the characters you can recruit is fun and different for this style of RPG, it could also be a chore and disappointing at times. A big issue I had was how certain characters could be inaccessible if you pass a certain point in the game or make one bad decision in some random dialogue. You can inadvertently kill characters that you could have otherwise recruited to your team. Unless you're playing with a guide to assist you, it's going to be near impossible to find every one of the 108 Stars of Destiny to join your forces. Missing characters could be a real problem in later portions of the game, like the minigames and other types of battles, but we'll get to that later. Some of the characters I recruited would never have been something I could have figured out without the use of a guide to help me, which could have ended really badly if I had no other chances to get that character again. I'm not a fan of missable rewards like this in JRPGs, especially when most of the time in Suikoden recruiting someone could be very situational. You'll definitely want to get all 108 recruitable characters as you go, but that comes with a whole lot of backtracking and patience in doing so. I understand a lot of people love how you could find so many playable characters throughout the world, which I admit is very cool, but I think the game could have approached it better in most instances.
I love the idea of gaining new allies into my party in my role-playing games. I feel like it expands upon the lore and the world that I'm being a part of. And in Suikoden, this is something that's a really big pull and gravitating point for a lot of people of the franchise. The idea that you're going around the world gathering all these allies to your cause. That's something that's very cool and very original for a game of that era. In Suikoden 1, you go around the world map to these different towns at some point in the game, and you're able to convince different people to join up with the Liberation Army. They not only help you out or sometimes are able to join your party in battle, but in other times, they help you out and assist you in different ways. Not just in battle itself, but maybe providing different shops, allowing you to get certain items, and other little things that come into play much later on in the actual experience. At some point in the story, you take over this castle that is abandoned after defeating a certain boss, and you're able to kind of use it as like your main base of operations for the rest of the entire game. You not only gather allies to come help you out over there, but this is also a spot where you can really just return and kind of regroup and like store items and do all these different things. As you gain new allies, it actually levels up and you get different floors of the castle, not only repairing it, but allowing you to do a variety of different things depending on who you actually recruit to your party. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, there are certain moments in this game where it can be a real pain in the ass trying to recruit certain characters, especially when some of the criteria in order to get them, they're either very vague or just very tedious and very annoying in certain instances. At certain points in my game, there were certain characters that I had no idea you could actually recruit, and I ended up losing a chance to put them into my army, which I found very annoying. That's something that I just really dislike about JRPGs or just any sort of game overall. The ability to not go back and actually have another chance to get all these different things, especially when it's so key to the experience. There's certain times in the game where you actually have a choice in order to rescue a certain character or kill them or do whatever it is, and if you choose the wrong decision, you won't actually be able to recruit that character into the Liberation Army and you'll never get another chance again. To me, that's not cool. I find that to be a little bit annoying. I really wish that in certain towns or even some of the characters that you're trying to recruit, they gave you some sort of hint in order to bring those characters into your army. Allow me to at least, try to figure out in some sort of way rather than just go on nothing whatsoever unless I was using a guide. All that being said, however, when you do get a bunch of people into the Liberation Army and you start to see the castle change up and actually really power up towards the end of the game, it does look very freaking cool and it allows you to do a whole bunch of different stuff that you couldn't do so early on in the game. To me, that gives a real good sense of progression that really kind of shows that not only my character but my overall army and my allies are really powering up towards the finale of the game. That is something that all JRPGs really need to do, and when they do it right, they really do it right. There's 108 Stars of Destiny, and it's going to take you a long time to gather all these different allies. Again, I really highly suggest that if you're playing this game, you need to use a guide in order to find them all, because there are going to be those moments you're going to screw up, and either you're going to have to reload a save or start the game all over again. And trust me, you don't want to do that. Okay, now that we got all that out the way, let's talk about something that really rubbed me the wrong way about this game. This is something I know a lot of people are going to be really upset at me about, but I feel like I have to get this off my chest because in my experience, this was just something that just really bothered me. I really disliked it, and here's what I mean. Let me explain it to you.
Okay, let's talk about what I feel is the worst part of Suikoden, the mini-games and sub-games that you run into throughout. I understand that people love this game as a classic JRPG for the PlayStation, but it's things like this that make it far from perfect or critically acclaimed for me. I really dislike all the minigames of Suikoden, to be honest with you guys. This includes the dice game, the war battles, and the duels. There's even a stupid wheel minigame that shows up randomly in one part of the story, but I'm not counting that one here even though I really hated it as well. All of these have one thing in common, and that's a heavy reliance on luck in order to progress in the story. The problem with luck in minigames related to story progression is that they can make things go very wrong and force the player to repeat something again and again. Whether that requires reloading from a save point or grinding a lot to get something that could easily be lost for no reason, this is incredibly frustrating and not fun. There are moments in Suikoden where this happens and forces you to restart from a save point before some major battles or events you may have already completed, padding out the time that you spent playing through these sections. This happened to me more than a few times and really rubbed me the wrong way, especially when it wasn't any fault of my own, just really bad luck. This is notorious with the dice minigame in some places, where you need to win to progress the story or recruit a certain character. The way the minigame is designed puts so much in favor of the CPU, even when it does horrible and sets you up for an easy win, only to take away all of your resources without warning and force you to grind for everything once again. The war battles are just as annoying with this. Despite being designed as a rock, paper, scissors game, it can be difficult to predict or set up a strategy against the CPU when you're severely punished for guessing wrong. And if you didn't recruit a lot of characters along the way beforehand, you're gonna get really punished here. If these were side minigames that didn't influence the story too much, then it wouldn't bother me at all since I could just ignore them if I wanted to. But the few instances when you're forced to do well in them can be incredibly harsh and not fun to experience.
If there was one thing about Suikoden that I really didn't like, it was this, hands down. There's just something about these minigames that just completely rub me the wrong way. I just don't like the idea how some of them just feel like they're a little bit more in favor of the CPU than actually giving you a chance to win them. Especially in the dice game. I feel like the dice game is the worst of them all because just the way that the luck works out and just the idea that you could just lose all your money just like that for no reason just completely just turned me off. It was just something that just really got me super pissed off a couple times while I was playing this game. I had to reload my save a few times just to prevent myself from losing all my cash. I was like, what the hell? In this case, I do understand that there is a trick and some sort of exploit in order to get more money, especially towards the middle half of the game, but early on, when you actually have to play the dice game in order to get certain characters, it just completely rubbed me the wrong way. It just was completely just not cool in my opinion. The way that this is designed, because it's so heavily reliant on luck and so random, it's just terrible in my opinion. I don't know whether that's related to the luck of my characters or just it is truly random, but whatever it is, it was not cool. I didn't like it. I thought it was terrible. The other thing I do want to touch on is the war battles. I feel like the war battles could be a little bit annoying too, and the duels as well. This is all stuff that just, again, is a little bit based on luck, even though you could kind of predict when certain things are going to happen, or at least have enough, like, abilities, especially if you have a lot of characters in the Liberation Army, in order to deal with this stuff. But just, especially early on, I just didn't like them. It's just, as soon as, like, certain things happen, you could lose the entire battle and have to reload a save all the way back there. I just don't like that whatsoever. To me, it's things like this that are very archaic about certain JRPGs that just have not aged well whatsoever. A lot of modern JRPGs have really kind of alleviated these problems, especially with not only giving people extra chances or having like save points or reload spots a lot closer to when stuff like this goes down, but just the way that Suikoden handles this, and like, again, perfect example, the first battle that you have to do, the war battles. If you lose that, you have to go all the way back to the prior battle that you just did, and I just didn't like that whatsoever. Don't get me wrong, however, I do understand that those battles could be very predictable. At least, certain guys that I was reading was kind of detailing that to me, but I still feel like they're just not great to be a part of. Again, if these were optional stuff and I never really had to do them after that one instance, then it wouldn't bother me as much. But because they do pop up here and there throughout the entirety of the game, I don't like them. I wish that they weren't in there, or at least weren't as prevalent as they were in Suikoden 1. Again, that's just me, that's just my personal opinion. And I do understand that a lot of people who love this game are probably gonna have an issue with that, but again, just as someone that's like starting out and just accepting what the game gives to me, this was something that really turned me off. I just didn't like any of these other mini games. I really would have rather had like some of those big battles. I would have rather just did a bunch of battles in the standard fighting system or the standard battle system as opposed to something like this. To me, it just didn't need to be there in all honesty. So despite all my criticisms and the stuff that I said up to this point, did I still enjoy Suikoden as a total package? Regardless of all the little things that I picked at, I still feel like that Suikoden was pretty enjoyable to play through. I think that there's a lot of interesting aspects about this that are really unique and really came into their own later on in the series. There's a lot of characters to come across, there's a wide open area to explore, and there's a lot of different things to be involved with throughout the entirety of this story. It's a very colorful world with a very interesting story, even though it might not be the best for some people out there. If you are a fan of JRPGs, however, I do highly recommend that you at least experience this story at least once. As the start of a franchise that people speak very highly about, I did enjoy my time with it, and I understand where they're coming from when they say that Suikoden has a lot of great stuff that make it feel like a very classic JRPG. And there you go, guys. That's my review of Suikoden for the PlayStation 1. It's a very interesting RPG, like I said, and I'm glad I finally got to play it. So many people have told me about this franchise, and I was like, you know what? It's about time that I just dive into it and see what all the fuss is about. And I'm glad I went to the beginning rather than jumping to some of the other games that a lot of people say are probably some of the best JRPGs of all time. But I wanted to see where the origins of this franchise was, and I wanted to start things off right. But either way, that's just my opinion about Suikoden on the PlayStation 1. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Tell me, do you enjoy Suikoden 1? Do you like any of the other Suikoden games? Try not to spoil stuff in the comments if you guys can, but let me know how you feel overall about the first Suikoden game. Put it in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos just like this one. All my reviews, all my podcast talk shows, all my vlogs, there's a lot of great content that you're gonna find here on this channel. And also, don't forget guys, I'm on Patreon. I have a link down in the description box below to my Patreon page where I put a whole bunch of exclusive content. At the dollar level or higher, you're not only gonna get early access to videos just like this one, but a whole bunch of other great exclusive content that are over there for my Patreon supporters. Again, highly suggest that you do so. Links in the description box down below. Anyway guys, I will talk to all of you again very soon. Peace out and stay epic everybody.
Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Make sure you guys check out some of these other videos in the boxes after the credits, and don't forget to visit my Patreon page via the annotations for more exclusive content. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.